Welcome to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good whatever it is, because you are all over the world. Welcome to the Friday edition of 7 Investing Now. My name, of course, is Daniel Brooks Klein. I'm being joined today by Matt Cochran. And Matt, we are going to get to talk about one of our favorite subjects. That is, of course, European soccer. No, it is not. It is Walt Disney earnings. That is a little throwback to last Friday's episode. Matt, let's get right into it because we've got a lot to unpack here. We're going to share some personal experience with Disney. We are also going to take your questions and comments, so feel free to ask them in the chat. In theory, wherever you're watching this, you should be able to comment. But Matt, why don't you give us the top line highlights of Walt Disney earnings here?
Yeah, sure. So the company brought in $17 billion in sales. That's up 45% from last year. Earnings was almost $1 billion, just under. And that's a significant improvement from last year when they posted a $5 billion loss. Now, of course, Dan, this is like the repeating theme here. This is all going back to COVID, right? So I don't look too much at the year-over-year comparables.
No. So the Disney theme parks a year ago were largely closed or operated at very limited capacities. We're going to talk theme parks, but we're going to talk streaming first. And Matt, I shared this on Twitter today. I actually think Disney is the sneaky biggest winner of the pandemic, despite the fact that when they lost $4.8 billion because they couldn't operate their theme parks, that looked bad. But I think Disney Plus growth accelerated massively. Let me share some of those numbers. They're at 116 million Disney Plus subscribers. That's up from 57.5 million a year earlier. That is doubled. And that's up about 13 million from just a quarter ago. Matt, before we get into Hulu Plus and ESPN Plus and I don't know, Mickey Mouse Plus, Pluto Plus, Goofy, lots of streaming services here, Hotstar. What are your thoughts on these numbers? Because they're just unbelievable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, they're great numbers, Dan. And I'm a happy customer of the service, right? And I can't believe how well they're doing with these shows they're rolling out with Marvel. I would love to see the pace of Star Wars material increase, but the Marvel shows, the movies that they're rolling out, the Pixar films, I think they're doing a fantastic job with the service. It's honestly, I don't think it's too much of a surprise for you either, Dan. I mean, these are great numbers, but are you surprised that it's this successful? Because no, I don't think I am.
No, I'm not. I'm surprised maybe at the pace of it, but here's the reality. If you are a Marvel fan, you have to watch Loki and Falcon and Winter Soldier, and you want to. Basically, whatever Disney has been releasing has been my appointment Friday night viewing. So my wife goes to bed, I watch the new episode of The Mandalorian or The Bad Batch or Loki or whatever it is. And I've talked about this a lot, and I think this is an advantage that Disney, it doesn't get talked about enough. When they put something out, whether it's Loki, which is a tentpole show, everyone in the Marvel universe is going to watch that, or The Mandalorian, which is an event show that goes beyond Star Wars, or it's something like The Bad Batch or The Mighty Ducks show. Now, those shows aren't going to be the massive zeitgeist hits, but if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to watch The Bad Batch, which is a cartoon spinoff from the Clone Wars. If you have nostalgia for the Mighty Ducks and have kids, and a lot of Disney fans are kids, you're going to watch that series. Every single show they put out is a hit. Quick, Matt, name me a current hit on Netflix.
I don't know. You know what? So here's the deal, Dan. We've gotten rid of Netflix the last 3 months, and we're going to be back on. I'm not saying we've left it forever, but Netflix is like a service now that we feel like we can come in and out of throughout the year, to try to save a little bit of money. Now, I would say about Disney Plus, to your point, right? So my family, we're starting to watch the Turner and Hooch show. We're watching the Mysterious Benedict Society show. And the Marvel shows, that's must view. That's a must view for all 6 members of my family. And it's not just like you said Marvel fans. It's a must watch for Marvel fans, but they're growing that base. It seems like monthly, there's more and more Marvel fans out there than there used to be because of the phenomenal success of MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, they've just done such a great job with that intellectual property.
Yeah, and to different points, all of these shows provide an entry into the community. Now, Do you have to have watched all the Marvel movies to follow, say, WandaVision? You really don't. That could have been a starting point for you. Falcon and Winter Soldier, a little more enmeshed in the universe. Loki worked just fine as a standalone show. The Mandalorian does not rely on your knowledge of Star Wars for you to be a fan. I think that's really important. And I don't want to pick on Netflix here, but I think it is very important to know that Disney doesn't take gambles. There's no guessing here. There's a big content spend. You mentioned ramping up Star Wars shows. I think they have something like 13 Star Wars shows in some form of development. Many of them slated to go would have come sooner had it not been for the pandemic. But Matt, let's get into some of the deeper numbers here. So we talked about that it's 116 million Disney Plus members. ESPN Plus is at 14.9 million, and Hulu is at 42.8. We'll come back for that. That is a massive increase for Hulu. Revenue is up 57% to 4.3 billion. Average monthly revenue per subscriber for ESPN Plus and Hulu went up slightly, went down a little bit for Disney Plus, but that's largely because of Hotstar. Hotstar is their India and Indonesia product that's sold at a cheaper price, and it kind of has to be based on the economics of that part of the world. These numbers are all astounding. But Matt, did you want to talk about Hulu? Because that's a sneaky successful company that really doesn't get talked about.
I definitely want to talk about Hulu, but one more point about Disney Plus, like they're still rolling out internationally. So like this calendar year, they're about to have a big rollout in Japan. They're going to roll out in Taiwan, South Korea. In Southeast Asia, you have a lot of Disney has a fan base there. And you're going to see that next year. They're rolling out in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and South Africa. So they're not done rolling this out internationally. So you're going to continue to see these numbers go up just from adding these huge geographic territories where there are fans of Disney. So like the last point about Disney Plus I just want to make is like it's not global yet. So you're still going to see a lot of user base add just from these new territories being added.
Yeah, and let me give you the total addressable market. Before I do that, remember, we would love your questions and comments about Disney, and feel free to ask us other stock market questions, which we could get to at the end of the segment. So this is a case where Bob Chapek, he is the CEO of Disney. He says they can get to between 230 million and 260 million subscribers by 2024. Matt, Chapek has traditionally soft-sold the numbers. I'm going to argue that they get to 230 million by early 2023. I think that's realistic. I think the reality is as they add these territories, and they have not saturated the US. There is significant room to grow. And every family that has kids, when those kids hit, I don't know if the age is 4 or 6 or somewhere around there,
it's
has
2.
to get
it's 2.
Is it
it's
2?
2? Oh yeah, it's 2.
The movie Cars on DVD, so this ages me a little bit, was my babysitter for like 18 months. Like my son watched it like 6,000 times.
Same.
That's something that's really underrated and underplayed with Disney. But let's talk a little bit about the Hulu numbers. Now, Hulu includes 2 things. It's regular Hulu, which is part of the Disney bundle. It's also Hulu Live, but they don't really break out those numbers. Hulu has nearly doubled in subscribers since Disney bought out Comcast and Time Warner. Good move, Comcast and Time Warner, letting them have that. The growth in subscription and advertising revenue led to Hulu being profitable this quarter. Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, those might be the only profitable streaming services. Maybe Discovery Plus, but probably just those. They got more impressions for ads and higher rates. Matt, would you like to comment here? Because these numbers are, in my opinion, astounding.
Yes. One of those things about the higher advertising rates, like when they asked the CFO, like why they were going up, she said a lot of addressable advertising and a significant ramp up in the dynamic ad insertion technology that we have within Hulu Live. That's targeted advertising. We've always talked about this. Like when you own the consumer experience, when you're buying directly from the company, they're going to have more customer data. And Disney is using this to drive like addressable advertising. And we've seen like these connected advertising companies do really, really well the last few years. A lot of that comes from Hulu. And a lot of that comes from now Disney owns that experience. They're going to use that data. They're going to leverage that data to increase these advertising revenues. And you're seeing that in Hulu being profitable this quarter, doubling their members, like you pointed out, Dan, since they bought out Time Warner and Comcast. Like that's just like that's huge because Hulu is not. I mean, I don't know about you, Dan, but this is not part of my bull thesis for Disney. Hulu is like a footnote. when I talk about Disney. So for Hulu to be profitable, driving profits, and being like any kind of value add to the Disney bundle you have here in the US and Canada, that's pretty big. You know, when you compare the average revenue per user for Hulu now, that's $13.15. That's not too far behind Netflix's average revenue per user for its US and Canadian subscribers. So I just think that's like this could be a very underrated story right now, with it growing its user base like this.
Not only is it not part of my Disney thesis, it's not something I remember having, except when I screw up my DVR of Saturday Night Live and then realize, oh wait, Saturday Night Live airs on Hulu a couple of days later. The negative there is the reruns of Saturday Night Live do not include the musical performances. I'm going to assume that's a rights issue, but I find it very, very frustrating.
So I wanted to talk to you about this because I thought you might be the guy to talk to. I have a subscription to Hulu. I got it last year on Black Friday. It's $2 a month. I've watched it like 5 times. Is this like, are there users like me who are going to drop? Like, I know the average revenue per user is much higher than $2 a month, but like, what are people watching on Hulu? Because I don't really use it.
So Hulu is a great backstop if you've cut the cord. I don't have the option of cutting the cord because I live in an HOA that pays for my cable. So why wouldn't I take cable that I'm already paying for? But if you don't have cable, an awful lot of NBC shows, an awful lot of ABC and Fox shows air on Hulu 24 hours later. So if you're a Simpsons fan and want to watch Sunday's episode, you wait till Monday night and you watch it. If you're a Saturday Night Live fan, you wait till Sunday night and you watch it. I think that's a massive growth base because if you are someone who cuts the cord but doesn't want to pay for a, let's call it $35 to $70 streaming service, and that would be something like Sling at about $35 to start, or something like Hulu Live or YouTube Live in the 60s, then Hulu fills a lot of those needs at a very, very low price. I actually think as part of the bundle, I don't think I've ever turned on ESPN Plus. I think that's fair to say. I think I got it thinking maybe I would watch Katie Nolan's show, and then they canceled Katie Nolan's show. That being said, at some point, I'm sure there'll be a UFC pay-per-view or something that, like, Matt comes over and we watch the fights, and it's worth having. So I think these are going to become like useful for some people and just kind of background services for other. I also think Hulu is going to do more Marvel content, and they're going to do maybe more R-rated Marvel content, maybe more tween, like YA Marvel content. They've talked about that quite a bit. So there are some levers they haven't pulled, and I think they're going to pull those. As we pivot off of Disney Plus, I want to take a question from Stock Investor. Before we do that, our very own Max Chatsko, I promise you, we will take your question and talk about what you're asking later on in the program. But JT Street, if you want to bring up Stock Investor's comment, Disney built an in-house Netflix in 2 years. Do you think they will take the #1 spot over time? I think we're going to have a co-number one. I don't think it's going to be particularly clear who the leader is in terms of subscribers. That said, Disney Plus is going to be insanely more profitable than Netflix. Matt, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it still has a way to go to catch Netflix, just for the US Canadian subscriber base, not talking the global base, but like, which it never will, I don't think. But like, just for the US Canadian subscribers, like, I mean, it still has a ways to go. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. I just think like Disney shareholders should be happy that it's profitable, it's growing. Disney seems like they're doing a good job with it. It looks like a very good idea to buy out Comcast and Time Warner a few years ago. And so just right now, let's just be happy with that, and let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll see how that goes.
Do you think Bob Chapek drunk texts people over at Comcast just making fun of them? Because I cannot imagine selling this stake. And I'm teasing a little bit. Bob Chapek, of course, would never do that. But like, you own something and could have been a passive investor, had a platform for your content, and just collected a check, and instead you sold out because you were worried about cost. It's going to go down as historically one of the worst deals of all times. Let's take the comment from Max Lucas before we pivot into theme parks. If you want to bring that up, JT, we would appreciate it. I watch Hulu. I watch more Hulu than Netflix. Like you said, Dan, for the cable shows the day after. Yeah, I have Netflix because T-Mobile pays for most of it, and my wife and son actually watch a lot of Netflix. I don't watch any Netflix. I'm going to be on a plane, so I'm going to look on Netflix because the downloadable aspect of that is very valuable. But like Matt, I would cycle in Netflix like 1 month every 4 months if it was just up to me. It's not that they don't have shows I want to watch, but once they killed the Marvel shows, and obviously that was for licensing reasons, it no longer became appointment viewing for me. And some things like they have, say, like The Flash, about 6 months after it airs on TV, I can watch it with commercials on the CW app for free. And I do that because like during commercials, I answer my Slack. Like it's not that big a deal. Again, we're going to take your questions and comments as we go. Matt, go ahead. I'll let you weigh in on this, and then we'll pivot to theme parks here.
Well, just about Netflix, Dan, don't you think it hurts them like they drop all their shows at once? So I love Cobra Kai. I love Stranger Things. I really enjoy a few other shows on Netflix, but they drop all the shows at once so I can go through them in a week. If they stretched Cobra Kai season out to over 3 months, I'm subscribing those 3 months, and then you do Stranger Things after that. That's the next 3 months. I feel like I get what Netflix is saying, that this is for the customer experience and they just want to make the customers happy. But I believe if it's not already hurting them, it will soon.
It's massively hurting them. This is a gigantic mistake. They are doing something for 2% of their audience, and they're sacrificing. We've talked about this a lot, so I won't belabor it. When Stranger Things comes out, it's a 72-hour news story, and you never know when you could talk to your friends about it. Like, I haven't watched Cobra Kai, but if I did, I'd be hesitant to bring it up to you because who knows if you've watched it. Maybe I watched it.
Oh, I've watched it.
Right, but maybe I watched every episode in 3 weeks, and maybe it took you 10 weeks.
Yeah, like, it took me 10 days, but yeah, sure.
With the Disney shows, every episode of Loki gets like an Entertainment Weekly article, a Ringer podcast, 17 articles on comicsbook.com. It becomes a major news story. They're covered like sporting events. I don't understand why Netflix does this. I get it. You're catering to a small percentage of your audience, but here's the reality. If I want to binge watch something that comes out 1 episode a week for 10 weeks, here's an idea. Wait 10 weeks and then binge watch it then. This is backwards thinking. It's a mistake, and they will die on that sword. Now, they won't die. Netflix is incredibly successful. They will remain incredibly successful, but they could be more incredibly successful if they did it that way. But let's talk theme parks. And I'm going to talk a little personal experience later on, but let's just get some of the numbers. Revenue in the segment jumped 308% to $4.3 billion. Again, when you were closed in the previous quarter, the percentages don't matter that much. Attendance is up. Operating income was $356 million. That compares to a loss of $1.87 billion. Domestic parks basically made a tiny bit of operating income, couple $1 million. International parks posted a loss of $210 million. But Matt, this is a massive turnaround. This shows essentially Disney is back open for business at its theme parks, but there is going to be a ramp up, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's actually what I was going to say, Dan. Like, I think the really big story, yes, we knew, customers are rushing back to the parks. They want to get out, and this Delta variant is a wild card, and I don't think we still know how this ends. But like people want to be out and about, and people want to be enjoying in-person experiences again. We're tired of being cooped up in our homes. I think that's a very safe statement to say. Now where how the Delta variant affects that or not, like right now, they're saying like even right now in the quarter, with the current news about the Delta variant out there, the parks are at capacity, and they've been increasing that capacity. And I think the really big story, Dan, is that they expect the parks to be fully staffed by the end of this calendar year and increasing capacities as they ramp up the staffing. Now, they said they have to ramp up staffing ahead of increasing capacities. So they might be like throwing out just hypothetical numbers, but if they're 80% staffed, they might be at 60% capacity, things like that. But like the more they staff, all the events and activities and rides and shows and things like that, the more they can open up capacity. And I think that's the really big story, that by the end of this calendar year, obviously with the Delta variant being that big, huge wild card, like they expect to be like at they want to be fully staffed and with a higher in-park capacity.
Yeah. So I want to go back and give a little bit of nuance first. So I talked about how the operating income for this segment was $356 million. It's important to remember that parks also includes consumer goods. So the actual profit they made in this came largely from consumer goods. I mentioned that they lost money in the overseas parks. They eked out a $2 million profit in the US, but these are massive turnaround numbers. So when you mention capacity and staffing, here's a couple of issues that are weighing on this. Right now, rental cars are essentially zero out of Orlando. They're incredibly expensive. What does that mean? Disney is going to be an attractive vacation because you can stay on property and not need to get into a car. The problem is Disney closed down most of its hotels, and since the NBA bubble has been bringing them back up, and that requires training staff on new procedures, hiring staff in a very competitive market. Taco Bell in the Orlando area is offering a $600 starting bonus and $15 starting wages, so that puts Disney in a very competitive market. They also maybe didn't handle how they laid off workers all that well. They probably could have kept people much more at the ready to come back. So they have to bring hotel capacity back online. They have to do things like you can't just bring back your orchestral show. Your orchestra has to practice and you have to hire musicians. So a lot of the high capacity shows haven't been operating, partially because you don't want to cram people together, and certainly they're enforcing mask rules inside, which Universal Studios is not. So Disney has been very proactive on sort of sticking with what doctors are telling them and keeping the parks feeling safe, which I've been there a bunch of times. They've done a really good job with that. But once they can bring up these high capacity shows, ramp up more theaters, turn on more transportation, the monorail just turned back on, so you no longer have to take the ferry boat to get to Disney World. Your ability to get to Epcot from the Ticket and Transportation Center, which is the main parking lot for both, instead of going to the Epcot parking lot, that's been turned back on. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and Disney has been full. They don't really tell you what the capacity is, but I'm going to say it's 50 or 60%. I've been there, and they've done a really good job in that lines are long, but they're better than pre-pandemic lines. There's absolutely some problems. I've talked about the hour it took me to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks, which was partially a fault of the people in front of me who'd never been to Starbucks before, apparently, and partially a problem of staffing. There were simply not as many people there as I would have expected. But I am incredibly encouraged that the holiday season for Disney, I think, is going to be close to, if not full capacity. They also have the 50th anniversary. They have a number of theme park openings. Ratatouille is testing at Epcot right now. The Space Restaurant is testing. They will have the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster at Epcot in the next 12 months. They will have the Tron Light Cycle, which is it exists in, I want to say, Tokyo Disney, and that's been an incredibly well-reviewed ride. They have a lot of stuff that normally would be a draw. Star Wars Land is still incredibly new, and Rise of the Resistance is inarguably, don't argue with me, the best theme park ride anywhere because it's 4 separate rides in one. Each one of them would be a pretty good ride. So I am bullish on the theme parks. Matt, I will give you the last word before we move on to other things and more of your questions.
Well, the thing that also, another thing from the conference call, Dan, that stuck out, and to your point about Disney being a sneaky COVID-19 winner, is that it gave them an opportunity to retool their app. So they talked a lot about the Disney Genie on their conference call, and that's going to be a new service, and its goal is to be a user-friendly app to create a better, more personalized and customer experience for guests, putting them in control and providing even greater flexibility and choice. And it sounds like from when they were answering questions about this, that they're even going to show them depending on what day it is and where the lines are shorter than other attractions, to guide guests to those lines. Hey, right now it's a 50-minute wait at Thunder Mountain, but Jungle Cruise, it's only a 20-minute wait. Or that's a lie, because Jungle Cruise is never, the wait is never that short. But so it looks like they said it can increase monetization of guests. So I don't know what that means. But hey, it's a hot day out. There's an ice cream stand 50 feet around this corner if you go that way. Things like that, I guess. But
so let me talk about
it. But it gave
them
a chance to retool this app.
Because the existing Disney app is terrible. It is a power hog, and the park has very few places to charge your phone, so that's a problem. I always have to bring an extra battery. Here's what it's going to be. It's going to be everything from unlocking your door, which you can do in the current Disney app in your hotel room, to virtual queues. And they're not saying virtual queues because people don't like the current way they're doing a virtual queue for Rise of the Resistance because of the capacity of that ride. But it's going to be something like you say, okay, hey, I'm going to this park tomorrow, and here are the 5 rides I want to do. Here are the 7 hours I'm going to be there. And it tells you, hey, come back to the line at this point. And you might not have no line, but instead of standing in line outside for 2 hours before you even get in, you might be in just the normal inside queue, which is often part of the ride. You're going to be in that for 20, 30 minutes. It's going to manage people. It's going to say things like, hey, if you want to eat lunch at 2 o'clock instead of your 1 o'clock reservation, we'll give you 5% back to manage capacity. It's a lot like what Starbucks does with its app, where it can say, hey, you want to come in for buy one, get one Frappuccinos at 4 o'clock because the store you go to is kind of quiet at that point. It's going to be very intuitive. It's going to help move people around. Now, a lot of this functionality on a sort of do-it-yourself basis exists in third-party apps. I use one that shows me line times, which are much more accurate than the ones in the Disney app. It sort of works like Waze, where it's user reported. I think Disney's going to get very sophisticated in moving you around and figuring out ways to incentivize you, to do what those of us who are in the know already do. Like, I know if it rains, go have something to eat near the ride you want to ride after it rains, because the second the ride reopens, if it's one that closes due to weather, you should be able to walk on that ride. There's a lot of things they can do digitally. There's going to be AI here. This is also going to affect pricing, or something like, I'm in Star Wars land and I've expressed that I want to do the build a lightsaber, but there were no appointments. And it'll say, hey, Dan just got off the Millennium Falcon. Someone didn't show up. Would you like to do this? And here's a 5% coupon to do it. It's something they need to invest in. It's something Universal Studios has actually done a little bit better. Though, again, I don't love their virtual queue because you can get shut out of things you want to ride. Whereas, there should always be the option to wait in line. If your whole goal was to ride Rise of the Resistance, there should be an ability to do that. I do think that is problematic, but I am very bullish on technology. I'm very bullish on the parks. I want to take the next to last comment from Daniel Delgado, because he brings up something that's at least worth considering. It's the Delta variant one. Yep. The Delta variant could shut down Disney World in Orlando. No, it won't. I would be more worried about Disneyland in California if we have a flare up. But I think the reality is Disney has showed it will make operational changes, but it's going to stay open. And Matt, feel free to weigh in here, but I don't actually think, barring a major change in the trajectory of COVID, that we're going to see that type of shutdown.
Things would have to get really bad to see Disney World shut down. You might see some of their European parks or some of their Asian parks, and like you said, Disneyland, Disney World in Florida. I think, if they shut down Disney World again, then things have gotten really, really bad. I knock on wood. I don't see things getting that bad.
So I want to talk about sort of the one negative facing Disney right now, and that's the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit. So for those of you who don't know, Scarlett Johansson, the star of Black Widow, sued Disney over compensation for that movie. Basically what she said is, hey, I had a contract that guaranteed me a full theatrical release. You released it on Disney Plus simultaneously for $30, and I did not get paid for that. And Bob Chapek, the CEO, in my opinion, handled it terribly. He basically came out and said, well, you've already been paid $20 million for it, which is an attempt to shame her. And here's the reality. If her contract gives her a percentage of the gross or bonuses or whatever it is, the fact that she's already made $20 million is not relevant. If the contract says, look, we all might think it's not fair that athletes and movie stars make tens of millions of dollars, but that was clearly her contract, and that's not what happened. This should have been handled financially, because honestly, would it have been worth it to Disney to hand her 20 more million or 50 more million or whatever the number should have been, or to go to arbitration quietly over this to figure it out, rather than publicly shame its only leading lady superhero star? Matt, your thoughts on this one, and then we can also share Max Chatsko's comment on it.
Well, look, yeah, I don't think Disney handled it well. They should have definitely handled it better. And the optics that it's like you pointed out, like it is like one of their few female leads in the Marvel universe, makes it that much worse. Look, that being said, like, is this like a big story or a big deal for Disney shareholders? No, it's not. So, it's bad PR. They handled it wrong. Hopefully they learned their lesson from that. But yes, they should have definitely paid her right away. Or I don't understand their thinking there either. It was like a no-brainer, but horrible PR move. But like, as for Disney shareholders, this is mostly noise.
Yeah, and if you want to share Max's comment, so Max asks, our very own 7 investing lead advisor, Max Chasko, says, does the recent PR fail at Disney over Black Widow create an opportunity for other streaming services, or is it all about the IP? So the only opportunity here is that Scarlett Johansson is more available because they did cancel a movie she was going to do based on, I forget which ride, the Tower of Terror. She was going to star in a Tower of Terror movie. That's a bad idea anyway. But I thought Jungle Cruise was a bad idea, and it appears to be doing well. But is Scarlett Johansson a needle mover? In the right role, she is. But Disney has thousands of characters in its IP, and it probably wasn't going to go back to Black Widow anyway, though I'm not sure why you can't have a sequel to your prequel and just keep it in that universe. So I don't think this creates an opportunity. Matt, you're welcome to weigh in here.
No, like I agree. I think it's mostly about IP. We can have a whole conversation about movies based on rides, which I also think it's not a good idea. But Pirates of the Caribbean was hugely successful, so maybe I'm wrong too. But yeah, like, look, when it's all said and done, can they find other actresses to fill that role capably? Yes. Will they? Yes. Like it's about the IP. Her character in the MCU seemed like it was kind of at an end, though. I will say with Loki and with this prequel, they kind of showed there's many ways around that. So who knows? But I don't think it's a big deal.
The end result here is that they are going to pay her contractually on some basis. They're going to figure out what this would have made. She's going to get the money anyway. It never should have gotten public. And now you have, I'm forgetting her name, the woman who starred in Cruella de Vil is thinking about suing. You're going to see a ripple effect here. But the reality is, and this was handled correctly during the call, when they made those deals, they did not know we'd have a pandemic. They did not know releasing on Disney Plus was going to be an option, or maybe even a good option. So Disney very quietly has to go back to all of its big actors that have pre-existing contracts and just have make goods. And as a shareholder, I don't care if Disney has to pay people money that it's hard to figure out exactly how much it would owe, because this has been a big driver for Disney Plus. And as we move on here, we're going to move on from Disney, and we're going to talk about where do you wait. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Real quick, Dan, we do like going. I know we passed this topic, but we do have a graphic from our friend at the Science of Hitting. So just going back to Disney Plus and just showing like what they are contributing now to the overall revenue line, and just see how much this is growing quarter by quarter. Again, this is from our the Science of Hitting. He's been on the podcast a few times. I think he'll be on more. But like it just shows like just quarter by quarter how much this is contributing at an annual run rate, and expect this number to keep going up. It's already at $6 billion now at an annual run rate. Next quarter, that's going to be close to $7 billion. So look, Disney Plus is becoming a much bigger contributor to Disney's top line. And going back to what we were saying earlier, just a huge success for the company.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that while their content spend is increasing, you can't make all those Star Wars shows without spending more money. Their technology spend was very front-loaded. Not that there won't always be evolutions and spending on the app, but they are not going to need to spend the billions of dollars they did to develop this platform, not entirely from scratch, because it was built on existing stuff they own, but to develop this in the first place. Got a great question from Daniel Delgado, or more of a comment. We'll share this one before we move on here. If you want to bring that up, JT, who is going to be watching Jungle Cruise with his family later this evening. But Daniel Delgado says the airline cancellations make people's vacations a bad vacation experience at the moment, more out-of-pocket experience to go anywhere. So there are some negatives right now with the airlines. We've seen some pretty big cancellations with Spirit, with some of the other airlines, with Delta and American. Delta, in my experience, hasn't been great. That being said, Orlando is such a heavy flight visit. It's not like when your flight to Columbia, South Carolina gets canceled. When there are, whatever it is, 42 flights a day out of JFK and LaGuardia to Orlando, having flights moved around and canceled is frustrating, but it's not the same issue of if your one flight a day to Nassau, Bahamas is canceled, or your flight that gets you to Houston so you can fly to Cozumel or whatever it might be. So I do think also that, yes, you might be mad at the airline. I don't think that's going to translate to Disney. And I don't think a year from now, when you're ready to take another Disney vacation, you're not going to assume that's been fixed. So it is a factor. It is absolutely factored into my willingness to fly certain places. I'm flying to Vegas on Sunday, and I very specifically booked my flight there. So my connection is on the same plane. Meaning if my flight leaves late, I'm already on the plane. That's my connection. So I can't miss my connection. Less important when I'm coming home because I have things to do when I get there. When I come home, I have some flexibility. So that was a great question. And
Dan, let me piggyback on that question and ask you another question because so we talked about airline cancellations. There's a huge rental car shortage right now. And you've talked about like, I don't think publicly though, like how that might be good for Disney. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've talked about this on the show before. And by the way, the Science of Hitting will be on this program next week. He's a really interesting guy and a friend of Matt and a new friend of mine. But that being said, yeah, I own a rental property near Disney, and it was busy all summer because Florida residents had their kids out of school. It's a great family destination. It's got a bunch of pools, and it's a fun place to be even if you don't go to the parks. But most of our traffic now would be people going to the parks. Disney never has a slow season. But because there are no rental cars and we just started school here, so you see a slowdown in the local with kids tourist market. And normally you start to hit in, well, schools in New England don't go back until, September or late August. And then you start having the rolling school vacations. Well, none of those people can stay at my property because they can't affordably rent a car. So if they could stay at my 2-bedroom, 1,400 square foot condo for $150 a night, but they have to spend $150 a night to rent a car, they're going to go, well, wait, I could stay at Disney's, Art of Animation or even a nicer Disney hotel, for $120, $150, $200, it doesn't matter. And I don't need transportation because we've got the Skyliner and the monorail and the buses and the boats and all the different ways to get around. So I actually think the current conditions mean that almost everybody who book a November, December, and those are incredibly busy months. The Thanksgiving through Christmas season at Disney is a sold out, locals don't go anywhere near it time at Disney. Maybe you walk through the hotels to see how they're decorated. But this is one of those things where if you're normally someone who's frugal and stays off property or wants more space and stays off property, that's simply not an option unless you're going to drive. So that's going to be very, very good for Disney. That is a great comment, Matt. I appreciate you asking me there. So before we talk about ways you waste money, and you shared those with us on Twitter, I want to talk about what we are. We are lead advisors at 7 Investing. What do we do at 7 Investing? We share our highest conviction stock picks each month with our members. Every one of the 7 of us makes a stock pick, and we all have different backgrounds. Matt and I overlap. We cover entertainment, we cover some technology, but Matt covers the payment space, which is something I'm interested in because it factors into spaces I cover directly. Max Chatsko covers biotech companies, covers emerging energy companies. Dana Abramovitz covers healthcare. Steve Simonton, Anirban Mahante cover emerging technology companies, looking for the next best thing. Simon Erickson, in that same world, but has expertise in semiconductors. All sorts of expertise on our team, each making different picks. So maybe you want a riskier strategy. So maybe you're going to buy certain advisors. We sort picks by level of risk. Maybe you're a little bit older like I am, and you want mostly conservative picks. Well, I'm making mostly, not always, conservative picks. If you'd like to become a member, it is very easy. Drive to Matt's house, put $50 in an envelope. No, do not do that. Go to 7investing.com/subscribe. And for $49 a month, or wait for it, Matt, $399 a year. That is an unbelievable bargain. That is more than 2 months free. You can get access to not just our picks, but our deep dive write-ups on those picks. Mine was 3,000 plus words and like a dozen graphics this month. We also do a video pitch where we give you everything. Now, do you have to read everything? Do you have to watch everything? Nope. Maybe you like the company, but you had questions about valuation. So maybe you just skip to the valuation section of the report. Maybe you love the company, but don't know what its management. So you skip to the management section. Maybe you want to watch my 43-minute pitch for my stock where everybody asks me questions. So you can see not only my bull case, you can see what the bear questions are or what the skeptical questions are. We also have a members only call. We're going to do that a week from Friday. We do it the third Friday of every month, where for 90 minutes, we answer questions about past picks. We talk about the things we've picked in the past that we have the highest conviction on going forward. There is a ton available for members. There's all sorts of exclusive content for some of our emerging stocks. The Max Chatsko picks, he might be doing 2 or 3 company updates a month as different points happen, as different de-risking events take place on some of these newer biotech stocks. That's less relevant on your more established companies, but there is something for everyone, and it is fun. We have a good time. Our members have a good time. As we move forward, feel free to ask us questions, but we are going to plow on here, and we're going to talk about where do you waste money? That is something I asked on Twitter, and for me, Matt, it's really obvious. I am an impulse buyer of technology, and I can never get it quite right. So I'll joke, I am wearing a Fitbit right now. This is the latest Fitbit Charge 4. In the past 2 weeks, you've seen me on this program with an Amazon Halo. I could not ever get past the fact that that doesn't have a watch face. So I would look at it constantly and it wouldn't tell me what time it was. That was a problem. And I have an Apple Watch. Why do I have an Apple Watch? Because Apple Watch does all the stuff the best, but it only has like a 20-hour charge, and it's heavy and it's inconvenient. So I, on an impulse, bought a new Fitbit to try to see and I have 6 other Fitbits. I have 3 laptops. I have a Mac desktop. I am very impulsive when it comes to technology, mostly little stuff, mostly things under $100. Matt, where do you waste money? And feel free in the chat to share areas you waste money or areas you're trying to be more careful.
Well, there's probably a lot of candidates for me, unfortunately, but the 2 that stand out the most is, one is eating out. We eat out too much. We used to be a lot better at this, but just sometimes you get caught up in the hustle and bustle of shuttling kids everywhere, and just you're almost too exhausted to make dinner, or the leftovers aren't that appealing. So we go out to eat too much. And the second one is buying books that I don't read. I don't mind buying books that I read, but why do I buy so many books that I don't read? That is it's like I can't help it. It's like I'm a moth to flame when it comes to books, and I just buy books that there's no way in this universe that I'm going to get to read at any time what is even remotely reasonable for buying the book at this point in time. So I don't know. I have a stack of I'm at this point in time, I might have more books in my house that I haven't read than I have read.
I have very mixed feelings on takeout and eating out, because I look at it as a time balance. I am the cook in my house. I make dinner when I'm home 3, 4, maybe 5 nights a week. And I plan those, and I get Butcher Box delivered, and I'll cheat and use Instacart sometimes because I don't want to go to the grocery store. But that being said, if my choice is at 4:30, hey, I have a report I need to finish or something I want to read, or the work Slack goes crazy and we need to chat, and that means I have to order, well, how much value did I create for our company? How much, quote, money did I make, even though it's not like I get handed more money? How much value did I create? And does that offset the fact that I just spent $60 for takeout instead of $20 making, tacos or whatever I would have made? Now, last night I made salmon and I made lobster risotto, and I'm a pretty good cook. But that being said, people laugh at me for Instacart or ordering from Whole Foods, which I can almost see from my house. It's less than a half mile away. But here's the reality. If I'm weighing my time of leaving the house and going to Whole Foods versus paying a higher price, I believe you pay a higher per item price like you do with Instacart, though it's all a little squishy. I might be wrong there. That's worth it to me. Certainly, I know Instacart's more expensive, but the reality is, if I don't have to go to Publix, that's worth it to me sometimes. So
Dan, if you had 4 kids, you might think differently, though. Those kids' meals add up quickly at restaurants.
Ravi Shah says, Dan, you might be the only person who buys a Mac on an impulse. Yeah. I'm always looking for the best setup to do this show, the best travel setups. That is one of those things. And then following up with a comment from Matt here. Yeah, we can put that one up, JT, if you want. I didn't read it, but I'm going to assume it's okay. Matt, I can relate.
Can read it.
Yep. Matt, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Matt, I can so relate. I don't leave empty-handed from a bookstore. I bought about 100 books within the last 2 years. I'm with you, Ravi, man. I have a wish list on Amazon too. That's like 1 million books long too. So it's like, I don't think my problem is getting any better anytime soon, unfortunately.
I've actually gone full digital on books. I hate to say this because I love bookstores. Is I'll go to Books A Million, I'll go to Barnes and Noble, and I will take pictures of books to buy. In both cases, I'll always feel guilty, so I'll go to Joe Muggs at Books A Million or Starbucks at Barnes and Noble, and I'll buy something. But I just feel like when we moved, I got rid of something like 13,000 books. That's when we moved from Connecticut to Florida. My son's not a reader.
A lot of boxes.
Heavy
boxes. Heavy boxes.
I couldn't pack them. It wasn't feasible. I moved myself. I would have had to get like a second truck to do it. So I donated them all. Even that was really, really difficult. And I've decided the only physical books I'm going to own are books written by friends, books that really mean something to me. So I probably own less than 20 physical books. I have a bunch of copies of my own book, Worst Ideas Ever, where they don't send me any money if you buy it. So I don't, if it's in print at the moment, it's a great book. It's funny, but again, I don't get any money. So read it just because you want to read it, not necessarily because you think I'm going to benefit. But let's go. We'll go to Bradley Smith's comment here. We've got a whole bunch from Twitter, and then we're happy to take your comments and questions. JT, if you want to bring that up, I'm hoping you have it. If you do not, that is not a problem. So Bradley Smith says, I don't know if I waste any money, but I do hate spending the money watering my grass. Matt, that's actually a factor here in Florida. You have no choice but to water your grass, right?
Absolutely, especially if you don't get rain for a couple of days in the summertime, man. That sun burns up that grass. It's watering the grass is a real thing.
Stock Investor says he wastes money on investment advisory services. I pay for almost every one I find. They're all too good to leave. Well, we appreciate that. We have some friends out there in that space, so we love seeing people support multiple ones. I will argue that some are better than others. Ravi Shah says, impulse Amazon buys. I've done better with this, Matt. I actually think a little bit before I buy something, but I will say that I probably waste $20 a week on impulse Amazon buys, but I don't know if it's waste if I actually use it eventually. Is this a problem for you as well?
Pro tip, put it in your cart, leave it there for 48 hours. If you still want it 48 hours later, then buy it. But that helped like us cut down a lot of Amazon spending. Just put it in your cart, leave it there for a couple days, come back to it. And if you still want it, then go ahead and buy it. But like, there's so many things at that moment, you're like, oh, I should buy this, or I'm going back to books. I'll hear someone on a podcast, I need to buy that book or whatever, so just putting it in your cart and leaving it there for a couple days helps me a lot.
So we've got two. Eric said coffee. Pasha Kane said Starbucks. A bunch of people. Haley Carroll said shooting fish in a barrel and shared a picture of a Starbucks cup. I'm going to push back here. And you've all heard me say this, but Starbucks can be a waste of money. If you're somebody who'd be just as happy with the free coffee at the office, or making a coffee with a Keurig, or programming your Mr. Coffee to make coffee, or you're a snob who wants to make your French press or whatever it is, for me, Starbucks is a ritual and an experience. I don't always go to Starbucks. I sometimes go to local coffee houses, but I like taking my laptop or meeting a friend and having that 45-minute coffee and maybe breakfast experience. So I'm not seeing that as a $5 cup of coffee. I'm seeing that as an hour of joy that I just paid $5 for. That feels like a really good value in a show where we talk Disney, where my Disney annual pass is something like $650. I can't tell you how many times I've enjoyed that Starbucks purchase in a Disney, where it's just like, you know what? I need to calm down. I need to decompress. I need to relax from all the stress of being at Disney. And I'm going to go wait in line, at the Starbucks. I'm going to have my, decaf caramel macchiato or cold brew or whatever it is. And I'm going to thoroughly enjoy that. So coffee can be a waste of money. It can also be valuable. Matt, your thoughts on this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, your experience is just different than mine. So like, I'll grab it on a commute, and like for something like that, I can make it at home and save myself $5 or $6. But yeah, as an oasis, or, I think we've all had that moment where Starbucks has served as a nice oasis from whatever it is, holiday shopping or running errands or whatever. But sure. But like grabbing it for your commute, you can probably do better than that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll point out that for my everyday coffee, I have an Amazon recurring delivery for protein enhanced coffee from the people at, I think they're called High Brew. So I get 12 of those a month. I have Starbucks concentrate, which I forgot was concentrate the other day. So I drank doubly strong Starbucks coffee. I also have a cold brew maker. It's like a machine I put actual ground coffee in, and it sort of whips up the cold brew in like 20 minutes. So, and I have a Keurig, though I don't think it's plugged in. I have an espresso pod maker. I have at the other house at least 2 Nespressos. So I'm not opposed to making coffee. I do often take the cheaper route of, having a $2 coffee that I purchased at the grocery store or on Amazon. But I do think there's a lot of value. And even, Matt, we both work from home. You have 4 kids. I only have the 1 kid, but he likes to play Xbox on the couch where I like to work. There are plenty of times where I've decided, hey, you know what? I am going to go to Starbucks as a third place. I've said it on this show. I cried the first time I realized I was at a Starbucks and I could sit down at the table inside. I'd been outside. I was meeting you for dinner one night, and I went outside to the Starbucks right near where we meet for dinner, and that was pretty joyous. But that was like 5:30 at night. It wasn't that hot. It's typically 80, 90 degrees in the summer here. So when they reopened the dining room, that was an event for me. But let's plow on here. Will says, food delivery, probably too insensitive to delivery and tip fees. Again, it depends what that saved you. Like there are times we pick up food because there's a better chance they're going to get it right. And I'm pretty critical of all the food delivery services because your order is not often correct. But that being said, if my wife and I are both working and it doesn't make sense for us, to go across the street to the BJ's brew house to pick up dinner and we have it delivered and it costs us 10% more, I think of that as an investment. Again, I don't have 4 kids. Matt, I'll give you another comment here and then we can move on and wrap up here.
No, I think food delivery it's too expensive. So I can't, I don't know. When it comes to Domino's, sure. Because that's an amazing service. I think most regular viewers know my feelings on Domino's. It's a lifesaver as far as it goes for me. But for Uber Eats or DoorDash or anything else, man, those delivery fees are killer. Usually, even when I want to order food on a food delivery service, I look at those prices. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, we've had that problem as well. Mark Holt says, I'm pretty frugal. I clip coupons, I shop the deals, and tell the kids' grandkids that ordering soda at restaurants is a ripoff. Save it or earn it, baby. Happy to be part of the 2 Comma Club. So I think there is a point to this. Because, I've talked about traveling a lot. We all know I go on cruises. I go to Vegas. I'm in Disney a lot. I am someone who likes a nice drink, and I'm with friends. I'm absolutely going to order a Manhattan at the bar. I'm going to savor that. I'm going to have the experience. I almost never pay for alcohol in a bar if I'm with my family or if I'm by myself because of that absolute frugality of wait, I'm going to spend $13 for a drink when I could just make it at home. So I do think there are some choices we make. Again, if Matt and I go out, and we're meeting somewhere, I have no problem having a couple of nice drinks, in the bar, because where's my value? My value is the social experience. But if I'm going out to dinner, I don't necessarily need to have that drink that's going to really pad the cost of my bill. I think we all make choices like that, where it's let's not get dessert at the restaurant. Let's go to Dairy Queen on the way home because we're going to like that more anyway. Or there's a 50% chance we're going to leave the restaurant and go, wait a minute, I don't need ice cream. Why am I getting dessert? I just had dinner. So I think we all need to make those little choices. I think it's really important to know what money you are spending and how you are spending it. We've got just a couple more of these. Matt, I'll leave it up to you if you want to take Matt Chasko's comment. I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, no, go ahead and put it up. Matt used to waste money paying for car washes. Since I joined, he makes me do it. Luckily, my 12-month initiation period is over next month. Look, first of all, this is a lie. My kids used to do it before Max, and they'll do it after Max. But it's been, so that's it.
I never used to get my car washed, but Matt, I'm sure you've experienced this. If you drive from our area, and we don't live that close to each other, we're about 45 minutes apart, but if you drive from Southern Florida to Orlando, the sheer amount of bugs that die on your car at certain times of year can be astounding. There's actually a car windshield wiper at the rest stops that hoses you down, but you have bug impressions. So I would say in Connecticut, I probably wash my car once a year for winter salt reasons. And I actually probably go to a car wash sometimes, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a quarter now for that reason. It's just I don't want to walk out and see 1,000 dead bugs on my car. Chris 000 says mortgage. Well, in most cases, a mortgage is actually a good deal. And I've talked about this. I'm renting right now because where we live didn't make sense for the pandemic. We sold it, bought our vacation property free and clear. And my wife and I are actually looking at getting back into the housing market. Now, the home we live in would probably cost more as a mortgage plus HOA than we're paying in rent. So in that case, renting is a good deal. But in most markets, in most cases, you are better off owning a home as long as you're going to stay there for at least a few years, let's say 5, and you're in a market that's reasonably stable. Nobody knows where the housing market is going to go. We obviously had a lot of changes due to the pandemic, but in general, you want to look at the 20-year history of that market and have a reasonably good set of odds that you're going to make money or get your money back. If you're going to be in a situation you might have to move quickly, a mortgage may not be a good idea. Matt, anything you want to add to that one?
No, not really. Like the only a little unrelated, but if we're talking about wasting money, make sure you don't waste money on credit card interest rates, guys. Like if you're not in that situation, like don't use credit cards. And if you are, use them and get those reward points, but make sure you pay them off every month. My goodness, that's a way I used to waste a lot of money every month. And that was like just changing that was like one of the better financial decisions we ever made. So make sure you're not in that credit card debt. Will be absolutely kill you.
I pay everything with credit cards almost, but I pay it off not monthly, pretty much daily. Like I will look at my credit cards and go, like, oh, okay, I'll just move the cash over. And I say daily, it's probably 3 or 4 times a week. I tend to use my Venture card for most things, though I have some things that I put on my Amex because some of the rewards are really good there. My Amex just auto pays once a month. That's not, you really can't make multiple payments for that one. But it's really important. The other sneaky way people waste money is they don't focus on their credit score. You really want to focus on your credit score because your mortgage will be cheaper, your car insurance will be cheaper, your life insurance will be cheaper. There are a lot of things in life that if your credit score is in the 700s, you will pay less for. And I know in my case, about 2 years ago, I didn't know that much about credit scores. I knew to look at it, but I sat down with our mutual friend, Matt Frankel, who is a CFA, so he has some ability to make recommendations. And he said, wait a minute, you only have 2 credit cards, one with a $10,000 limit and one with a $1,000 limit, and you use them for everything. So like you may have $5,000 on your credit, which is going to kill your credit score because you're using, now it doesn't matter that it's $5,000 I'm going to pay off in 2 days. If somebody runs a credit check on me, they're going to see I'm at 50% utilization. That's really bad. You want to be at below 25%, maybe even below 10% regular utilization at any point someone's running a credit check on you. So it wasn't like I was misusing credit. It was just the case of I didn't really understand what went into my credit score. When we got our last mortgage 5 years ago, we had run up a bunch of credit card bills because we just moved. So I hadn't paid off all the movers. It was like $7,000 or $8,000, and I was waiting to pay off, till we sold our house in Connecticut, and then I was going to pay those bills immediately. And my mortgage company said, actually, can you pay them now because they're causing your credit score to be 40 points lower? We believe if you paid them off now, and it did. It went up 40 points. So you really need to understand your money. Final comment here before we move to our finisher. Actually, we're not going to take another one. We are going to move to our finisher because we are running out of time. I have talked way too long. JT, if you want to bring this one up, it will be appreciated. Which of these will be the most helpful when it comes to solving the labor shortage? Higher wages, 40%, better benefits, 11%, flexible scheduling, 18%, automation, 30%. Matt, to me, it's a mix of higher wages and automation. I think we are going to see an awful lot of things that are labor eaters. Instacart has like some crazy amount, like 140,000 employees, and like 80% of that work can be done by robots working with people. I just finished interviewing the CIO of GXO Logistics, a recently spun off publicly traded logistics company, obviously based on their name. And they have a heavy use, like Amazon, of robots in their warehouse working along with people. But I do think you have to pay that. The new standard is going to be $15 an hour. Is that scientific? No. $15 an hour goes a lot farther in Orlando than it goes in West Palm Beach. It goes a lot farther in rural Texas than it does in Houston. But I do think it's going to be a mix of those things. Matt, your thoughts here?
No, I agree. I think it is a mix of those things. I would say like benefits are also in that mix somewhere. We've seen like Walmart and Target get creative like recently with like helping their workers like pay for their college tuition costs and things like that. I think you're going to continue to see that be a trend with companies trying to hire a younger workforce. But yeah, all those things are ultimately going to matter. But at the end of the day, higher wages, automation, those things are probably going to fix the problem the quickest.
The smart companies are dealing with all of these. They're addressing wages. They're looking at things like, okay, if I allow more flexible scheduling, will this parent not have to quit? Will this high school kid be able to work after school if I accept the fact that his bus might be late? That's something I'm dealing with having a 17-year-old who started working at Wendy's a few weeks ago. I think the best companies are going to address all of these. Look, my son is going to graduate this year, and I've told him he has his pick of which place that will 100% pay for college he can go work at, because he doesn't want to go to college in the traditional way. He wants to go work. And I don't care if he takes one class a semester and slowly starts accruing credits. And maybe at some point he'll get excited about college, and then I'd be happy to pay for a couple of years. Or maybe he'll just get a degree over a decade and it'll just kind of be a check the box degree, because at some point, I think in any successful career, you still need a degree in most fields. Maybe not every field, but a lot of them. But Matt, we've gone a long time. We're over an hour here. That is too long. If you would like to get in touch with us, we are info@7investing.com. If you would like to follow us on social media, we are @7investing. Please do that. We are interesting. We are fun. We share lots of great stuff. We share things you share with us. For JT Street, who is running things behind the scenes, for Matt Cochran, I am Dan Klein. We will see you on Monday.